So it looks like a bubble. But bubbles can go on a long time, Elijah, and they often do. So just because it looks like a bubble doesn't mean it's the end of the story.
So much for joining us today.
It's nice to see you again, Elijah.
All right. Now, the first topic I'd like to discuss is Bitcoin, because this last week we just saw Bitcoin skyrocket, probably more volatile than we've almost ever seen with Bitcoin. It's around 15,000 right now. What is your perspective on what's been happening to this cryptocurrency?
Well, Elijah, I'm not sure I'm the person to ask. I've never bought nor sold any cryptocurrency, so I mean, I wish I had. We all wish we had, whether it's a fraud or a scam or whatever it is. We all wish we bought it. I don't know. I know that the world has a money problem. I know that the internet has changed everything we know, and that the internet will change money as we know it. I'm sure my children will never go to a bank. If you go to China now, nobody has money. Everything is on their phone. If you want a cup of coffee, you put your phone there. If you want a car, you put your phone there, and you get it. So it's changing. Whether it's going to be Bitcoin or one of the others, I don't know. You've never heard of the company which invented the computer. You've heard of IBM. So just because you're first at something doesn't mean you're going to survive. We will see. It's certainly going to change. Whether it's Bitcoin or not, I don't know. Governments may come up with their own cryptocurrencies. All sorts of things will probably happen. Governments do not like losing control.
I know you recently were on an interview and you were saying that it seems like what's happening with Bitcoin right now, it looks like a bubble. Is that correct?
Well, Elijah, what I said was if I just took out the charts of this industry, whatever you want to call it, sector, 10 years ago there were none. Now there are over 2,000. And if I gave you that fact, and then I showed you the charts of 100 of them or 1,000 of them, and they all go like that, you would say, well, what is that? That's a bubble. Whether it's cotton or Brazilian stocks or whatever it happens to be, you would say that's a bubble. So it looks like a bubble. But bubbles can go on a long time, Elijah, and they often do. So just because it looks like a bubble doesn't mean it's the end of the story.
Now, just today, Sunday, Eastern Time, late this evening, basically the Chicago Board Options Exchange announced Bitcoin futures, and Bitcoin jumped quite a bit. What is your perspective on the fact that now Bitcoin, there's futures involved in Bitcoin?
Obviously, a lot of people want to play.
Yeah.
Somebody's been buying all these things. Somebody's been issuing new cryptocurrencies every week. So sure, there are plenty of people who want to play. You go down to the track, there are plenty of people who want to play. You go to the football pools, there are plenty of people who want to play. So yeah, lots of people who want to play this game. I'm not one of them, but so what?
All right. Now, I know one of the things that you've been concerned about is a collapse coming in. It seems like a lot of the currencies around the world aren't really backed by anything, and people are they're looking for an alternative to government fiat currencies. And it seems like a lot of people are going into Bitcoin, but a lot of people are also going into gold and silver. Do you see gold and silver as an alternative to government currencies?
Well, I said before that the world has a money problem. You're alluding to the same money problem I was talking about. We all are losing confidence in governments. We're losing confidence in paper money. Throughout history, when that has happened, people have looked for something else. Frequently, it has been gold and silver. So yes, you cannot change thousands of years of people's habits or inclinations or thoughts pretty easily. So yes, gold and silver have not lost their place in the world's system. You said people are losing money, losing confidence in things not backed by intrinsic value. Nothing is. I mean, all gold was everybody's belief that gold is a very valuable. I own gold, don't get me wrong, but there's nothing intrinsically valuable about gold or silver. But gold and silver have been used for thousands of years.
Definitely. And speaking of this collapse that you think is coming in the future, what is your perspective on the Fed's interest rate hike that they're looking to do very soon? And it seems like some people are looking for the Fed to raise interest rates again a couple times next year. Do you think this could possibly be like a catalyst for the market to finally come down? Because it seems like it's just been on an upward trajectory for a long time now.
Well, it will be a catalyst, or maybe the catalyst that causes the stocks to finally go down. Stocks have been going up for 9 years now. That's very unusual in market history. Doesn't mean they can't go up 19 years without a correction, but it's unusual. So we're getting closer and closer. What I said was that we're going to have more economic problems and market problems. We've always had them. So saying that we're going to have more economic problems, it seems to me it's pretty much like saying, well, next week it's going to rain. I mean, it's the way the world works. Now, for full disclosure, Janet Yellen, who's the head of the central bank in America, says, no, we're not ever going to have financial problems again in our lifetimes. So if you believe Mrs. Yellen, you should stop listening to me right now. I happen to know we will have more financial problems, and what I said was the next one, when it comes, is going to be the worst in our lifetime. 2008, we had a problem because of too much debt. But my goodness, the debt is much, much, much higher all over the world now. So the next time we have a problem, it's going to be real serious.
Definitely. And one of the things that you've also talked about, and I know the last time we had you on, you were talking about how, and this is a focus of yours really, that fundamentally you think the East is going to do a lot better in the future than the West. And you think a lot of people, for that reason should learn Mandarin. You think that the China is going to be very influential in the future. What are the fundamental reasons you think that the East is going to do better than the West? What are the differences, the different ways that maybe, for example, China is positioning themselves right now?
Well, first of all, it's been the case many times in world history. In fact, over the last couple of thousand years, since the birth of Christ, India and China have been the #1 countries most of the time in that 2,000-year period. It's only in the last couple of hundred years that Europe and the West have taken over that mantle. In China, they save and invest over 35% of their income. They educate their children. They work from dawn to dusk. They discipline their children. I mean, the difference in Asian education and Western education is astonishing. I moved to Asia and got my kids in Asian schools, and even I'm stunned. I knew it was a major difference, but I didn't realize it was this tough and this advanced. I mean, my kids are doing fine, so I'm not pulling them out, but it certainly is a major difference. There are lots of differences in the West and Asia. China is the only country in world history that's had recurring periods of greatness. Great Britain was great once. Rome was great once. Egypt was great once. But China's been the absolute top 3 or 4 times in history. They've also had total collapse and catastrophe 3 or 4 times in history. But they're the only nation that, after being at the bottom for decades or centuries, turns around and goes to the top again. I don't know why. I wish I did. I could get rich.
Definitely. And I know one of the themes that I've definitely talked about on this channel, and a lot of my guests have talked about, is that it seems like China and a lot of other countries in the East, also India, have been accumulating gold. And the old saying is that the people who have the gold have the power. So do you think that has anything to do with it? That the East is now accumulating more gold?
No, the reason they're accumulating gold is because they've been successful. You don't accumulate gold if you don't have the money to buy it. And the largest creditor nations in the world now are China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong. I mean, this is where the assets are, whether we like it or not. And so they've got to do something with their assets. And throughout history, people often put their money in gold and silver. They became successful before they started buying gold and silver.
Definitely. And I know one of the things that Trump seems to be doing, he wants to kind of separate from the East. Do you think that's a good plan?
Well, Mr. Trump is certainly making China great again. There's no question about that. He claimed he was going to make America, he's pulling out of Asia. That's leaving Asia to China. I mean, I'm appalled. I'm an American, so I don't like saying it, but, now he's just giving Asia to China. 3 billion people in Asia, and they all have the assets and the work ethic and the drive. He's the president, so he can do what he wants, but this is certainly, he's helping China become great again. I'm not sure he's helping America become great again by pulling out of Asia and leaving it to China.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that is a response we've seen a lot for the last couple of years is kind of this nationalist sentiment of trying to, you know, keep everyone out. For example, like with Trump's presidency, or with Brexit, or with the, you know, Catalonia wanting to secede from Spain. So what is your perspective on that whole kind of nationalist movement? And do you think that's a good idea?
Well, many countries are artificial countries. They were drawn up by victorious armies or by who knows what, conferences in the case of Africa, even conferences in the case of Europe. So most of these countries don't have any rational basis for existing, and people don't like that. People like to feel like they can control something. They don't like being controlled by somebody with different language or religion or food or skin color. They want to be with their own tribe. Not that this is good or bad. I'm just telling you the way the world has always been throughout history. They want to, maybe we're all going to dance to Michael Jackson, but we want to be with people that we feel like we understand and can control, if you will. So no, it's going to happen a lot more. It's already happened a lot. I've written about it in some of my books over the past several years. Yugoslavia no longer exists. Czechoslovakia no longer exists. Ethiopia no longer exists. Many countries of the Soviet Union no longer exists. Many countries are already splitting up. There's a huge movement in Europe, but it's because things aren't working. When things are great, nobody complains. Nobody's unhappy. Nobody complains about your neighbor when things are great. But when things start going bad, people look around for somebody to blame. It's very easy, and throughout history, people to blame the people, the foreigners, the ones with different skin, different food, different languages, different religion. It's very easy to blame them. They always have, and they always will. Not good, but it's a fact.
Now, is that the way to prosperity, though? Because it seems like, you know, for example, with Trump, he wants to, you know, he wants to bring jobs back to the United States and all that, and, you know, kind of leave the East, as you're saying. But, I mean, is that the way to prosperity in your mind?
Throughout history, countries that have closed off have gone into decline. Throughout history, the countries that are open and have lots of immigration have risen and become successful and rich. Whether we like it or not. You know, immigrants bring energy. Listen, anybody will pack up and leave his country to go to a place where he doesn't know anybody and doesn't know the languages. That's a brave, ambitious person. That's the kind of people I want working for me. You know, anybody who's got that much initiative and ambition to do that. And that has always been true in history. They've got ambition. They've got brains. They've got energy. They've got drive. Sometimes they have capital, but at least they have ideas. No, that's what made America great. America was made great. America used to give people land to come to America. We'd beg people to come to America. I live in Singapore. Singapore begged people to come, qualified, smart, educated people. So the countries throughout history that have brought in foreigners and immigrants have been the ones that have risen. You know, 50 years ago, Burma was the richest country in Asia. They closed off, said, get out of here, foreigners. And 50 years later, Myanmar was the poorest country in Asia, you know, went into decline. I can give you many, many cases of countries that have closed off and gone into decline.
So do you see that's what is happening in the United States right now? And then if so, what is your projection looking forward for the U.S.?
Well, Mr. Trump will tell you that he's going to close off. Many people want to close off. They think that is a way to salvation. History shows that that's totally wrong. No, so I'm certainly against it. I would open all the borders everywhere if I had anything to do with it. I would abolish passports. Who needs passports? We didn't have passports for a few thousand years. Passports have only been around for 100 years when the British started trying to control its own people. So no, I would open the borders. I would open everything. We'd be a whole lot better off.
All right. Well, Jim Rogers, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we let you go, we just had 2 quick viewers' questions if you had the time. One of the questions is, how do you suspect that gold and silver miners are going to do if the S&P, Dow, and NASDAQ crash?
The last time it happened, gold crashed too. Everything crashed. And that often happens when you have a panic. People they don't care. They sell. They don't care what they're selling because everybody's in a panic. Even they sell the good things instead of the bad things. So that may very well happen again. I expect it will happen again. In fact, I just hope I'm smart enough that if gold and silver go down in that kind of situation, that I will buy a lot more. Because before this is over, Elijah, gold and silver are going to get very overpriced. They're going to maybe turn into a bubble. No, gold. When people lose confidence in governments and paper money, they have always bought gold and silver. Maybe they'll buy cryptocurrencies too, but they'll buy all three.
Now, the second viewer's question is on cryptocurrencies, and they're wanting to know, what do you think countries, particularly in Asia, will do regarding cryptocurrencies? I know China has, tried to crack down on Bitcoin a lot. What is your perspective?
Governments don't like losing control. And if there is something that they can, especially money, that they cannot control, they're going to do something one way or the other. They will figure it out. Now, the Bitcoin people say they cannot. We're smarter than they are. And they may well be smarter than the governments. But the governments have more guns. The governments have controlled the electricity. The governments can figure out one way or another to take the situation back. I'm not a fan of governments by any stretch of the imagination, but I do know who has the guns.
All right. And if people are interested in learning more, maybe reading some of your books, where can they find you?
Oh, well, Amazon will sell you any book I've written. It's very easy. I've got a website, but it's just a historic reflection of my trip around, a couple of my trips around the world. I don't have anything to sell, I'm afraid.
All right. Well, Jim Rogers, we really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Elijah.